Hey guys, Hastings here and welcome to highlights from round 1 of the alternate one make championship. If you don't know how this series works, I will leave a link into the description of a previous video I've done explaining what this championship is, basically. Without further ado, let's get straight into it. The cars have already started and we're currently following the progress of a Ford Lotus Cortina, which is relatively confusing. Although it's actually a Lotus Cortina, it's classified as a Ford. But it's behind a very laggy Lotus, and unsurprisingly, the first heavy braking zone there is an incident which unfortunately killed a few cars and forced a few others off track as well. Luckily for this Ford that we're following, it was unaffected and was now just in front of an Audi and behind a Chevrolet. There are lots of different manufacturers in this series, that's kind of the point. Check out that other video if you don't know what I'm talking about. And down the straight, the Chevy in front was ridiculously fast, even overtaking the Nissan 240 in front of him. And the Cortina was faster than the Audi, and there's me just in the background in a little yellow Mercedes. But the Cortina was pretty quick around the rest of the track and managed to catch up rather quickly to the Nissan 240 that the Chevy had gone past quite recently. Into the first corner, up the inside, pretty standard move, get the job done. There's a couple of cars going side by side up ahead as well. I believe that's the, yes it is, that's the Chevy Nova overtaking a Mazda MX-5. The Nissan was having another go back at the Cortina though, up into the second corner. It's kind of a chicane and then a corner, but it's basically the second corner. And was still side by side by the time they sort of entered the back straight. And this time I was getting into the fray as well. There's kind of a four-way battle going on. Well, the Cortina got a very good run out the corner, as did I, and we kind of pulled away slightly from the Nissan and the Audi. I've got slightly better straight line speed, so I actually managed to make up another position as well by getting past the Cortina. The Cortina though was up the inside, coming into the corner at the end of the back straight, and going down into the chicane towards the end of the lap we were side by side. I had the inside line, but that turns to the outside line for the next section, and also the final corner as well. And in going around the final corner, I was quite tentative, tried to give the Lotus, or Ford, whatever it is, quite a bit of space, and ended up just dropping off track slightly. But I managed to get back on track quite quickly and throw it up the inside into the first corner, where the Ford would just hold it around the outside. This was a very good battle, this one, lasting well over a lap, as you can see. And up into the second corner, I had the inside line. The Ford's looking at trying to hold it around the outside, doesn't quite manage it, looks at trying to get a cutback, just about squeezed in front of the Audi. But alas, it was unsuccessful in its attempt. It managed to hold the position from the Audi, and now there's a Ferrari getting involved as well. But I managed to eventually just hold off the Ford there. The Ferrari had slowly been catching the group as we was all sort of battling in between each other. And he was sniffing positions as well, thinking, can I get a few positions here or not? And the Audi and the Cortina were going side by side into the corner at the end of the straight. So the Ferrari has an opportunity to try and squeeze up in between both of them. There you go, 3 wide into the chicane. The Ferrari is latest on the brakes, but just can't get to the inside line. Although he now does have the inside into the following right-handers. Although the Audi's coming back at him as well. Very close racing between these three. Ford's giving them lots of room, using all of the track and a bit more. And the Ferrari somehow comes out of that on top and gains not 1 but 2 positions in just a few corners. A little bit sideways through the first corner, but fortunately for him, the Audi wasn't close enough behind to capitalise. Just behind that group ahead, who were still going at it into the second corner, was the Nissan 240, who was now under pressure from a Volkswagen Corrado. One of very few front-wheel drive cars in this round. And going onto the back straight, the front-wheel drive Corrado had a very good run. And quite surprisingly, I thought, the front-wheel drive car was very quick in a straight line. I was expecting a front-wheel drive car to be more of a handling build, I guess. Although this is only C-Class, so I guess you sort of weigh up one or the other, and you can't really have so much power that a front-wheel drive car is going to be hard to build or hard to drive at C-Class. Anyway, the front-wheel drive car that I was talking about has managed to get past the Nissan 240, who's kind of lost a few positions, let's put it that way, since the start of the race. Up ahead, and the Mazda that got overtaken by the Chevy quite early on, was now under pressure from yours truly. I tried to get a nice wide run to get a good exit in from the second corner. And going around the right-hand kink, I had tried to sort of hold it around the outside, but that's never going to work. So I tucked back in and tried to get a good run onto the back straight, which I did manage to do. I tucked into the slipstream. You couldn't see from that last camera, you can see from this one. And I did have pretty damn good straight line speed at my Mercedes. So I was able to not only just pull alongside for the front corner, but pull back onto the racing line to be clearly at least a car length ahead by the time we got to the corner at the top. So I was now up into the podium positions. I was in third, and this Mazda had dropped down to fourth. He didn't really want to give up though. Obviously you don't want to give up when you've got a position, and he was slightly better around the corners, so around that last section he was trying to get back at me, but he didn't quite manage it. Back to the Audi, who dropped back a little bit from the Ferrari and the Cortina, but he was now under pressure from the Volkswagen Corrado that had previously got past the Nissan 240. See, the Ferrari just got a little bit of space up ahead there, and the Corrado is dropping back slightly through that section, but as we've seen, if he can keep it together through the right-hander and the left-hander onto the back straight, he can he's hoping that he can get a much better run onto the straight and use, hopefully, his superior straight line speed. We've already seen him outdrag a Nissan 240, which is in the background there. Can he do the same to the Audi? He's tucked right into the slipstream, but it doesn't look like he's going to be able to this time around. He's going to have to wait and see if he can get past at a later time. And that time comes very soon. Out of the final corner, not the final corner, out of the corner off of the back straight. He manages to pull alongside the Audi, but that's looking at trying to go around the outside of that corner, which isn't going to do too well. Tries to turn it into the inside of the next two right-hand corners, but the Audi just shuts the door on him and retains the position. And the Volkswagen drops back slightly, but then we come to another straight, where the Volkswagen, I believe, is slightly faster. So it all starts over again. Up at the front, there was a Pontiac, who pretty much just drove off and left everybody else for dust. He was so far ahead that he was even coming up to lap somebody. It was a Dodge Dart, I believe, that was involved in the first corner or the first lap incident, and was one of the few cars that got killed. And I believe that the Pontiac GTO just had a pretty quiet race, I guess. And like I said, he just drove away from everybody else, and no one could really catch him. The back marker does the very polite thing and lets the leader through, and just on to the next guy to lap, who's so far ahead of anybody else and could really take it easy. The guy in second place was a Chevrolet Nova, another classic muscle car. So no prizes for guessing what type of car I'll be building next time I come round here in C-Class, without any restrictions on my type of build. But again, once the Nova had got past the Mazda MX-5 that we saw earlier in the race, he also had a pretty quiet race, because I, in third on screen now, was quite a way back from him as well. And once I'd got past the MX-5, I had a quiet race, because I couldn't catch the Nova, but I was quite a bit quicker than the MX-5. So it's kind of a similar story for all of the front three. Get past the MX-5, have a quiet race, because there's nobody else about you. I believe it was the MX-5 still holding fourth position, and behind them was, I think it was then the Ferrari and the Audi. I'm not 100% sure at this point in the race. Speaking of the Audi, he was still battling with that pesky Volkswagen Corrado that had tried to get past earlier and must have succeeded somewhere. Didn't quite catch that on camera, but the Audi's now looking for a way back in front, and it's going to see if he can get a good run through the first section. Maybe he can do something into the heavy braking zone. The Corrado gets onto two wheels a bit through the first corner. It's very horrible if you clip the curb there. It really can throw your car off. And it really did unsettle this Corrado, and that's evident when you see the Audi go past quite so easily. There was no real overtake there. He just carried a lot more speed and didn't make a mistake. Onto the back straight, and once again it's another drag race with, hopefully for the Corrado, another position change. But I don't think that the Corrado's quite fast enough to get past the Audi. It is quick in a straight line, don't get me wrong, but so is the Audi. So it's kind of they're kind of toe-to-toe there. One's slightly better here, one's slightly better there. And this was actually a pretty good race to watch. And it lasted quite a while as well. Like, as you saw, when we jumped back to this battle, they changed positions. They changed positions earlier. They then changed positions off camera, and then they changed positions again. And now the Corrado's getting very close to the back of the Audi, trying to look for another way back past. I would love to have been in a fight like this all through this race, because it looked very interesting. Look at that, the Corrado has managed to go up the inside along the pit straight and gets into the first corner first. But the Audi tries to hold it around the outside, runs wide slightly, and concedes the position that he was trying to get back to the Volkswagen. Around the first corner they go, and there's a little bit of a gap now, so I think the Audi's going to be hard pushed to do anything about it. We jump now to on board with another Volkswagen, and as the leader laps a Toyota Trueno. I really hope I pronounced that right, because it's a word I always struggle pronouncing. But yes, the Toyota gets lapped and loses quite a bit of time doing so. So the Volkswagen Rabbit can now sort of close up a bit and have a look at trying to get past. Going down into the first corner, the Golf kind of tries to cut it a bit too much, clips the curb and flies across the track on two wheels, and unfortunately couldn't quite get close enough to have a look at making an overtake. But again, once you get onto the back straight, it's just a drag race to see who wins. A drag race was also going on up ahead between the Dodge Dart that we saw earlier and a Ford, I think it's an SVT Cobra. So another sort of an old muscle car versus new muscle car. And the Dodge Dart manages to get round or onto the outside, down towards the chicane off the corner from the back straight. And it looked like he was ahead there, but the Cobra sort of threw it up the inside. There was a little bit of contact. I believe the Cobra thought he was at fault there because it looked like he gave the position back, although I could be wrong. It definitely looked like he slowed down a bit because he's now got a big gap. A few laps later though, and the Cobra would be involved getting in the way as a lapped car almost, because the Cortina that we was following at the beginning had caught up to the Mazda that was sitting in 4th position, letting everybody go in front of him. Well, not everybody. Yeah, so I was wondering if the Cortina, now he'd caught up to the Mazda, if he could pull away and have a quiet race as well, like the top 3. But the Mazda seemed to have the better straight line speed. That is not something I thought I would be saying in this video. I would have thought a Ford Cortina would have vastly superior straight line speed than a Mazda MX-5, but it's all down to personal builds and who builds it, how, and different. But they're side by side for quite a while. The Cortina looking to try and get a cut back, but not quite managing it. Looking to go around the outside through the double right-hander onto the pit straight, but the Mazda's got the inside line. And the Cortina almost runs slightly wide and gets a little bit tail happy and a little bit of a twitch on coming around the final corner. And then we've also already seen the Mazda's got the better straight line speed and tries to hold it around the outside into the first corner. They touch, but they both stay on track. The Mazda's outside line turned into the inside line for the second part of that and managed to get down towards the second corner first. Touches the curb slightly and goes up on two wheels, and there's also a bit of lag there, so that was probably pretty scary. But manages to hold ahead by the time they get onto the back straight. With a nice good wide run, even with a good wide run even, the Cortina seemed to have that sort of initial acceleration that was better than the Mazda's. Although once they started getting down towards the top end of their speed, the Mazda's was definitely higher. And while these guys have been battling, the Ferrari was coming into the mix at the end as well. He was sort of sniffing a few positions, seeing if he could pick up one or two, especially if these guys run into each other. The Ferrari is in a prime position to capitalise. We've jumped from on board with the Cortina to on board with the Mazda now, because you've got the inside line going into the final corner and manages to stay ahead when they cross the line on that lap and hold on to 4th position. And again, he was managing to hold it up the inside, or hold it in front even, around the first 2 corners, taking a nice defensive line round the hairpin. The Cortina's trying to do everything he can, bump over the curb or whatever to try and close up, but this has been a really good and really long battle. And we're coming, I think we're sort of only a lap or two from the end of the race now, so it's really sort of crunch time. But coming onto another straight, and the Mazda has the speed to just pull away slightly and create quite a gap really to the Cortina, who is now very under pressure from the Ferrari Dino. The Mazda's got sort of a nice free run round that corner because of the Cortina dropping back. And we see now just how close the Ferrari is to the said Cortina. Going into the chicane, is riding pretty much directly behind him, trying to just sort of follow his lines, see if he can close up anywhere. And don't forget, you might have seen in shot just a second ago, there we go, there's also a Lotus 11. I think he might have been a lap down. I'm not sure. But as you saw there, the Cortina manages to hold the Ferrari off around the last few corners and hold his position. So now we come to the results from the first race. The Pontiac that we saw had a very quiet race in first. Chevy that we saw had a quiet race in second. And me and the Mercedes-Benz had a pretty quiet race in third. The Mazda had a very close-fought battle with the Cortina and came out on top. And it was the Ford that manages to hold off the Ferrari for fifth, and the Ferrari came sixth. First of the Volkswagens now came in seventh, who did manage to eventually get ahead and stay ahead of the Audi that he was battling with for quite a while. It was the Nissan up next in ninth, represented by the 240 SX, who was involved in quite a few battles of his own throughout this race. Just outside the top 10 is a Volkswagen and a Dodge. There was actually two lots of Volkswagens in this race because there was only so many manufacturers that we could use, so some of them had to be doubled up. And behind the Dodge was that Lotus. It was a lap down on the last lap. And bringing up the rear was, again, another Ford. That was the Cobra that we saw getting passed by the Dodge earlier on in the race. So that was only the first race of this round. The second round would be started from a reversed grid from the first race. So me finishing third puts me pretty much at the back of the grid, as per usual. Because of the way that the grid ordering had to work, we all started the second race in ghost mode, which makes it slightly nerve-wracking coming down into the first corner where everybody's sort of popping back into solidarity. When you're ghosting, you obviously drive slightly through people, and yeah, you don't want to be slightly inside someone when you pop back solid because physics will go everywhere. But you may have seen the Audi that we're riding on board with has had a phenomenal start, cruising right up behind a very, very laggy Dodge Dart, which is always interesting, trying to overtake someone that's lagging about all over the place. But he does finally settle down into solidarity and unlagginess, although only briefly because he starts flying around all over again once we get onto the straight. But yes, Audi started I think about 6th or 7th position and manages to work his way already into the lead, or not into the lead, into second position. And talking of the lead, we now follow the progress of last race's winner, and second places in the background as well. The Pontiac and the Chevy that both had pretty quiet races. Pontiac started last on the grid, or actually I think that was second to last because there was somebody that didn't make the first race. But on the back row of the grid, had already found himself up inside the points of the just one lap. I think he was up into about 6th or 7th at this point. So it just goes to show just how fast this guy and this... Ow, sorry, I just punched my laptop. That was stupid of me and rather painful. I'll try not to do that again. Yes, Pontiac is working his way through the field and cruising straight up behind a Toyota, whom just about manages to hold the position through the first section of the lap. But once we get on to the straight, it's a completely different story. That Pontiac is ridiculously fast in a straight line, and the Chevy's not exactly much slower, and they both end up managing to get past the Toyota. And you may see in the background that I'm sort of trying to hang on to these guys. I was on the podium last race too, don't forget about me. But yeah, the Pontiac and the Chevy both managed to get past the Toyota, and now they set their sights on the Volkswagen Rabbit, or the Mark 1 Golf, or whatever it is, depending on where you come from. You call it different things. Yeah, we'll just call it the Volkswagen, who lagged slightly and went ghosted and went slightly off track. Pontiac was trying to sort of stay as narrow as possible to give him some room, and ended up just running over the curb slightly. Fortunately, it didn't upset him too much. He still managed to take the position with relative ease. By the time they get into the first section, Pontiac was right up behind a Lotus, and I believe the Chevy had got past the Volkswagen in the meantime as well. Yes, you can see in the background he's just there. And you can also see that I'm pretty close to the back of the pack now as well. I want to get past the Toyota, I want to join in the fun. And we're going to jump on board with me now to see me try and do it. And we're going to test my straight line speed out again. We saw the Pontiac go past the Toyota with ease. Can I do the same? Well, yes, I can. I seem to be pretty damn quick in my Mercedes. But not only did I get past the Toyota, I was quick enough to pull alongside the Volkswagen down the same straight. Sorry about that, Dong. My laptop needs charging. Yes, I managed to get alongside the Volkswagen down the same straight and up the inside into the corner at the end and take 2 positions on just one straight. We jump back up now on board with the Lotus, who was holding up the leaders or the winners from last race. Although not for very long. You can see the Pontiac has already gone through, with the Chevy also doing so along the pitch straight as well. And there's just me in the background, again, trying to just sort of hang on to these guys and see if I can keep up with them. I would have to wait a while to sort of hang on to the back of these guys though, as I would have to get past the Lotus first, as these guys had already done. And the Lotus actually tried to have a go back at trying to take his position back from the Chevy, but things didn't go so well for him and put him slightly out of shape, enabling me to get right on the back of him to see if I can pull off said move and overtake him. And as we get onto the straight, I managed to get a pretty good run. And as we've seen, I've overtaken a few cars down the back straight with pretty good straight line speed, but the Lotus would not be one of them. He was hanging on very well. I'd had just enough over him to have a look up the inside, but the Lotus, being a Lotus, had superior handling and managed to hold it round the outside. Although coming down into the chicane, I was still sort of alongside, albeit on the outside, trying to put a bit of pressure on him, and it did sort of pay off. The Lotus unfortunately locked up going into the corner and ran slightly wide, just handing me the position, which means I could now focus on trying to stay with last race's second place. Up ahead, and last race's winner was now battling for the lead with the very fast starting Audi that he was on board with earlier. And up into the first corner, he just managed to simply get up the inside and take the position. Nothing more to be said about that move really. Which meant now that the Pontiac was free to go and create a nice big gap and win for the second time in one round. Further back down the grid, and the Subaru that hadn't made the first race was trying to make amends for it, having a very good move going up the inside of a Toyota, and now following through, trying to move up the pack, and had the Lotus ahead of him as the next car that he wanted to take on. Toyota wouldn't give up too much though, trying to go around the outside of him at the second corner, effectively. About that conversation. But that didn't go too well for him, and the Ferrari managed to get past him in the corner onto the back straight. So he actually lost 2 positions there, although he was trying to lose none, which is very unfortunate for him. And then again, once again, on the back straight, it's another drag race, so who's got the fastest car in a straight line? And the Subaru doesn't look to be the Subaru. It's going quite defensive into the corner at the top of the straight, and the Dino has a little looker going around the outside. But that's not the easiest move to pay off. He actually gets a bit out of shape on the curb and doesn't manage to hold it around the outside at all, although he does close up quite a bit under the braking zone. So there's also a Dodge Dart in the background trying to join in the fun, and the Toyota's still there as well, don't forget about that one. But for the time being, they're going to have to stay as they are. Back up into the battle for second, and I managed to get past the Nova that I was following and that had finished ahead of me in the first race. And we was now both looking to try and get past the Audi, which was currently holding second. I had a pretty bad run going onto the back straight, and the Nova was faster than me in a straight line, so there wasn't a lot I could do about it. I I did manage to get ahead of him. I didn't catch it on camera though, and I was now back behind him, which was slightly frustrating. I saw an opportunity to try and get it back, get up on the inside of the corner at the top of the hill, but as we've seen so many times, that translates into being on the outside for the first part of this chicane. And if you can hold it around there, it works, because you've now got the inside line, but I couldn't make it work. I couldn't hold the inside line. I was trying to take the track limits, sort of extend them slightly, see if I could try and get past, but this Nova was damn quick, and I was going to have to work my arse off to try and make that happen. Look at that, I was even trying to go right over the curbs, make up a bit of time there, going on a bit of two wheels. I managed to get alongside the Chevy again, going into the heavy braking point of the second corner, but the Chevy had the inside and there's not a lot I could do about it. I tried to get a better run through this section. Look at that, jumping over the curbs again, but again I just couldn't make it happen. And onto the back straight, I tried to get a really good run, but the Nova was already ahead of me, and with superior straight line speed, there's not a lot I could do apart from just tuck into the slipstream and make him pull me along, and hope that we would both close in on the Audi, see if we could both end up on the podium again, and see if we can grab more points. That's greedy, we want lots of points. But coming into the track at the top of the hill, corner at the top of the hill, I ran slightly wide, again extending the track limits to my own need, and it wasn't going to be work get past the Chevy. This is actually the last lap now, going around the very last corner. The Chevy pulls out from behind the Audi and tries to go alongside. I'm there, I'm trying to out-drag people as well, and I put this in slow motion because the line is there. Who the hell got third position? That was incredibly close. I'll tell you, by a margin of 0.003 of a second, it was the Audi that managed to maintain second position, and the Chevy unfortunately came third. I was fourth once again, finishing behind the Chevy, and I was also very close to those guys as well. Another lap, and I reckon me and the Chevy would have both got past the Audi. Behind me was the first Volkswagen. Again, it was the Corrado, the leader of the two. Up behind him was the Mazda, the MX-5, that did slightly better in the first race. The Lotus did much better in the second race than he did in the first. Ferrari was 8th. I thought the Ferrari would do slightly better here, to be honest. The Ford was 9th, with Dodge 10th. I don't really need to read these out, you can read them for yourself. But down at the bottom was the Ford again, and the Nissan 240 had a much worse race this time out. And for the scorings for the championships, we're using the standard FIA system that they use on the likes of F1, with the top 10 points per 10 there. If I can get my words out, top 10 positions scoring points from 25 down to 1. No surprise that the Pontiac, winning both races, is top of the table with 50 points, followed by the Chevrolet and myself, with second and third and fourth respectively. The Audi's impressive second position puts him in fourth, and the Mazda, after a very good first race, not quite so good in the second, rounds up top 5. If you've liked the video, feel free to hit the like button, leave a comment and subscribe if you're new. Thank you very much for watching the first round of this championship, and I'll see you later. So Hastings out. Goodbye.